So keeping your audience engaged is going to be presented by Graham Cairns. Graham Cairns is a distinguished Toastmaster and a professional speaker who has won multiple speaking public contests. He is the Area 5 Director for Toastmasters, meaning he is responsible for 5 Toastmasters clubs in Area 5, which coincidentally meet in this library, including ACS Toastmasters, which some of us are members of. And Graham Cairns is also a member of 3 clubs that meet in person in Brisbane, and is also a member of 5 online clubs which are based overseas. So please welcome Graham Cairns to the lectern to give us an educational on keeping your audience engaged.
Do the elbow, Jim. Again, thank you. It's Friday afternoon. I don't need this, I'm far away from it.
You can't take it off.
I can't take it off. It's Friday afternoon. You're at one of those work functions where there have been a number of speakers over the last couple of days. There's only one speaker to come, and you look down at your list and you go, oh no, it's Neville. Neville from HR. Now, Neville's a nice bloke, and Neville really, really knows his stuff about human relations and human resources and making the workplace safer and a better place for us all. But Neville is as boring as. And Neville comes out and he turns on the PowerPoint and he's got slides full of script. Text after 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 text. And that's only the first slide. But the worst part is that Neville doesn't just put that slide up there and tell you about what is up there. No, he will turn around and he will read out the slides to you as if you can't. Now, as I say, Neville knows his material. He's prepared this material, which is really useful, and if he gave them to you in handouts, you would be able to get value out of them. But because Neville is so boring, you look around, people on their mobile phones, you're trying to think, you know, do I do the laundry this afternoon, or do I do the lawn mowing tomorrow, or what is it I'm going to do? And Neville has lost you. Neville has lost the entire audience. Do you want to be Neville? No, you don't. And here's the thing. As I say, Neville's a nice guy. We're all nice people. Neville knows his stuff. We all know our stuff. Neville could present in a way that will get the audience engaged. I'm going to do this as an interactive thing. What's the first thing that Neville should do or should not have done? Anyone?
Less text.
Shoot the PowerPoint. At the very least, PowerPoint should have no more than 7 lines with no more than 7 words, or a grand total of 49 words per slide. Quite frankly, I think that's far too many. I think 3 or 4 words and a picture. A picture to make the point. But the thing is, if Neville, instead of reading out all of these things, had told us about, let me tell you about a business that I used to work for. Not going to name it, but it sounds like. And we had a situation there where, and Neville tells us a story about what happened in his previous workplace and why this was a bad thing for his company and how it was resolved and why that became a good thing for his company. You're much, much, much more likely to take notice of that, aren't you? Because A, it's a story, and we love stories. We've loved stories since we were children. In fact, our ancestors have loved stories since Drew and Maud sat around the fire discussing today's hunt. We love stories. That's how we learn. That's how we as adults still learn. So if Neville had told us that story, we might take away the lesson. If Neville had then said, okay, let's look at something that's developing where we are today. We've got a problem, and I'm not telling any stories out of school. You all know that morale is not as high as it could be. And part of the reason for that is because we've had to shed staff. But what can we as HR do to help you as well as the company? Well, let me tell you about a few of the things that we are doing that we are hoping will impact with you and will make your positions better. Neville, once again, has your attention, doesn't he? Because he's talking about what you want to hear. Now, all the stuff that's on the PowerPoint, as I mentioned, really valuable information. There's stuff there that you need to know, but you don't need to have it presented as a PowerPoint. What you need is to have it presented as a handout. Now, here's a quick question. When should you hand out a handout if you're giving a presentation?
At the end.
At the end. Why should you do it at the end? Because all they're going to do is look at it and not listen to you. Now, if there is stuff in your handout that refers specifically to your presentation, the equivalent of a halfway decent PowerPoint slide, then you might hand out the handouts first. But normally, at the beginning, I would say, I'm going to have handouts for you at the end of this presentation. So please, take notes if you want to, but there will be a handout, so yeah, you don't need to scribble furiously like you're in year 6 in school and there's a test coming up this afternoon. And then I tell them what it is that I'm going to tell them. I tell them, and then I told them what I've told them. Anyone know why we use that strategy? That tell them what, anyway, from your perspective, yes. Tell them what we're going to tell them. Tell them what we told them.
Yes. The reason is the intro sets the scene of what your audience, what you're going to tell your audience. You want your audience to know that.
Mm-hmm.
And the topics, for example, 3, the body of the speech, you want them to know that too.
Yep.
And then at the end, when you do your conclusion, you also want to your audience to have a summary and a message.
Mm-hmm.
And that is why we set it out as so.
Yep. There is a theory that sociologists talk about called the theory of primacy and recency. Primacy, that which we hear first. Recency, that which we hear last. You ever noticed old people in nursing homes can remember what it was like when they were young marrieds, and they can remember what it was like this morning, but they can't remember what it was like 5 years ago? That's the theory of primacy and recency in action. People remember that which they hear or experience first, that which they hear or experience last. So, if in a presentation you're trying to engage your audience, you're trying to get them to stay with you, tell them at the beginning, I'm going to be telling you this, this, and this. Then you tell them this, this, and this. And then at the end you say, so let's summarize what we've gone through. We've gone through this, this, and this. They will remember the first thing that you say. They will remember the last thing that you say. They may not remember the stuff in the middle, but if they remember the last thing that you said, or the first thing that you said, what have you told them? You've told them this stuff anyway, and it will work as a trigger. So, to hold your audience, you need to let them know what it is that you're going to be saying. You have to tell them stories. You have to keep them engaged. Ask rhetorical questions, like I've done a couple of times during this. But one other thing that I didn't mention at the beginning, and I do want you to write this down. The most important person when you're giving a speech is not you. The most important person is your audience. That can be one person or 1,000. But the speech, the presentation is not about you. It's about them. You're there to entertain them or to inform them or to amuse them, or to persuade, or convince, or motivate, or introduce, or welcome, or something. But you're there to facilitate whatever it is that they are receiving. The audience is the only important people in a transaction. So, as speakers, we want to be entertaining, we want to be informative, we want to be amusing, we want to be educational, but we should always want that not for us, but for our audience. Always bear that in mind, and if you keep the audience at the front of mind, then hopefully they will be carried along with you as you tell them these stories, as you tell them these anecdotes, as you tell them these facts and these figures. I should give you a little background on myself, just so that you know that I'm not just talking off the top of my head. I have spent 40 years as a journalist, mostly in radio, some television, a little bit of newspapers, but mostly in radio. Journalism is all about getting information from my head into the heads of my audience. So I have to try and keep it short, keep it sharp, keep it shiny, keep it simple, because with radio, you can't go back and reread that paragraph. No, it just doesn't happen that way. So I have to try and make it as concise and as accurate and as easily understood as possible. That's a skill which I have, I hope, taken into my professional speaking. Cameron made a joke before about who wants to go on a cruise ship. It takes too long to get anywhere. Well, I don't know. I love cruising. I love cruising out of Brisbane on a 7-day cruise. The thing on a 7-day cruise, you got, say, 3 CJs. People get off the ship, they go to Port Vila. They get off the ship, they go to New Zealand. They get off the ship, they go to Vanuatu. But then there are 4 days where they don't get off the ship. And there's only so much shuffleboard that you can play. There's only so much bingo that your average cruise ship person can take part in. And so they have what they call enrichment lectures. People who come on and speak for an hour or so about all sorts of subjects. The history of the South Pacific, colonisation from the Melanesians, the Polynesians, the Eurasians, it might be on how to write a media release for your community organisation. Well, I'm one of those enrichment lecturers. My wife and I travel for free in return for giving these lectures. So when I describe myself as a professional speaker, that's part of what I do. Doesn't pay all that well, but it gets me free cruises. That's got to be a good thing. And the thing is, with an audience like that, it's very easy for them to just get up and walk away and play shuffleboard or go find the bingo. So I have to engage, I have to keep them involved. What do? I tell them stories, I give them facts, I ask rhetorical questions, and I make sure that they're actually following with me. You too can do this with a few simple tips. Tell them what you're going to tell them what you told them. Use stories, because that's how we learn, and never, ever, ever use death by power.